being a good entrepreneur or business owner, it's not only about doing the right thing, but it's about doing the right thing at the right time. Right. So if someone is coming in, they're struggling, and they're let's say they don't have enough leads, right? And then it's Monday at 5 p.m. and they're trying to work on their balance sheet. That's doing the right thing at the wrong time.
Welcome to the Painter Growth Podcast, where we help you scale your painting company in record time. Join us as we explore sales, marketing, hiring, finances, leadership, and more, everything that you need to know to scale and grow your painting business. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. What's up, everybody? Mike Gore-Hickman here, founder of paintergrowth.com, and you're listening to the Painter Growth Podcast. And in today's episode, we have round two with my friend and painting business owner, Jesse Teron, running a $1 million plus painting business out of Vancouver, Canada. Before we said the episode was in 15 hours a week, and now it is much less than that. What's up, Jesse?
Hey, man. Happy to be here.
Yeah, stoked to have you again. Really, I got a lot out of our last conversation and really stoked to chat with you again. And because there's a lot has changed. A lot has changed in your business since we spoke a few months ago. So why don't we just start about talking about some operation stuff? So you have taken a step back from operations, and you've also seen revenue grow at the exact same time. Do you want to just walk me through kind of what's changed?
Yeah. So I think last time I was chatting about how I got my business pretty optimized to, less than 10, 15 hours a week, pretty consistently. And then as of September 1st, I took my general manager and we restructured the deal, and he's basically become the CEO of the company. And so what my role has turned into is I coach him. We do a deep dive once a month for monthly planning. And then I'm available via, text and call support. So, we'll have a few touch points during the week, and I'll just prompt him to get him thinking. But we, signed that agreement on September 1st. And we've had, two full months of him in this role. I haven't done a single sale. I haven't done anything in production. So, or sales or marketing, like anything in the entire operation. And with the new structure, revenue is come down a little bit, but my CEO, he's making more money and I'm making more money with the structure. So our net profitability for both of us has actually gone up from that structure. And it's been, I was nervous going into it. I had so many doubts going into it. I think I chatted to you kind of mid-August, and I'm like, man, I'm terrified right now about this model and this change. And it couldn't have gone better in the first 2 months. Like, he has more than doubled the goals that we set each month. And it's blown my mind.
So I have a lot of questions that I want to go through. If you see me look away, it's because I'm writing down notes and questions I want to ask you. So the person is obviously really important. So how did you find this person, train them, onboard them? Like, how did you develop this person? Because like a general manager / CEO to hire to run your painting business is not just found somewhere. Like, that person has to be developed.
Yeah. And I think that's when I told some other people about this, they're like, oh, like, that's kind of like, it's going to cost a lot of money to get that person of that level. And the interesting thing with the setup that I have is I took my now CEO 2.5 years ago. So he's 3 years younger than me. He's 26 now. So he's even, he was 23 when I hired him. He was a former hockey player, didn't go to school, didn't go to university. And I hired him as a painter for $20 an hour. I hired him and his girlfriend at the time, actually. And I knew that they were the first 2 painter hires that I did in this company that I started. And I saw both of them, and I'm like, hey, they don't have any painting experience, but I've done this before. I've taken someone from no painting experience to, all the way to a general manager role. And I was like, I can do it again as long as they have good character and they're willing to learn. And I saw that in Ryland. And so after the first season of painting, at the end of that season, he was driving the van, being more of a crew lead. And then that winter during the off season, it was a little bit slower. I taught him how to estimate, and then getting him comfortable with the numbers, and then taught him selling. So then the second year of working together, he assumed more of general manager position, which in hindsight was a little bit too big of a leap for him. So then in this past year, we actually took him out of sales, and I said, hey, I want you to get really good at marketing, and I want you to be so dialed with production. And we're going to really focus on those skills this year. And so that's what we did most of this year. And then when September came and he was responsible for everything, now he's a master at marketing. So he can generate, leads on demand, and it's super easy. He's got production under control, which is then now freed him up to actually be really solid at selling, because he can put his time and energy into that. And again, he doubled our sales bookings goal in September and October from that process. So
amazing.
Yeah, went from a $20 an hour painter to the CEO of the business. And
I just want to bust a couple self-limiting beliefs, because a lot of people think, oh, we're getting into the slow season. You're in Vancouver, which experiences winter. You just have in October and September, which a lot of people are saying, hey, slowing down, economy's slow, can't find work, but you're having like your best months ever.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's just, that's definitely not a reality that everyone has to believe in. Real quick,
the biggest thing on that too was incentives drive behavior. And it's something that I had to learn really, really well. So with the setup with Ryland now is like, he's in full control of the P&L of the business, and all his compensation is based on the profit of the business.
Yeah.
And so he is so freaking motivated, and I've like basically just gotten out of the way. And he's in these 2 months, September and October, he has made more money each of those months than he's made any month in the previous 2.5 years.
Amazing. So if you don't mind me asking, how do you have compensation set up for this role? How did you have it before, when he was just general manager, and then what changed when you moved him to de facto CEO?
Yeah. So when he was, this year, because we kind of pulled back from that general manager role, the first model that I had with him, he had a monthly salary as a base, and then he could earn commission for sales on top of that, and some production commission. And that was in the second year that it really didn't work. It was not a very profitable year. The second year that we did that model. And so this year we changed it where his entire compensation was based on the production, because that was his main focus, was production. And then he got commission for marketing. And so I basically gave him a percentage of the job. He had to get the labor done, and then he kept the net after he paid out labor and paint. And so he was in total control of what he would earn on that side. And then he was getting paid, per lead and per estimate that he'd bring in. Now he runs the P&L fully. And then we just worked out a deal in terms of what percentage of the profit he keeps and what percentage of the profit I keep. And so that's the model he's on now, where he's way more incentivized by, I said earlier on in this, like we've both been had our most profitable months. And it's because he is so looking at the numbers closer than he's ever looked at it. And he's so driven by like making each job super profitable.
Yeah. So are you paying him a salary plus profit, percentage of profit, or just strictly percentage of profit?
Just strictly percentage of profit. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, that's a big step. And one thing I like is how you learned, like you had a compensation structure and it wasn't working super well, and you revisited it. What were the things that you felt in that last compensation structure that weren't particularly working well?
It increased when we had the salary for him in there, all of a sudden my fixed overhead on a monthly basis went way up, which also drove more anxiety on my end as a business owner, being like, oh, I have a higher monthly nut that we need to cover now. And it wasn't really vibing for me. And then I also don't like to micromanage, right? But when I'm paying him a monthly salary, it's more like, hey, like, what are you doing every day, and being on it. With this model now, because it's just on the profit share. Again, I only really talk to him if he calls or texts me, or I'll send him a prompt here or there. Other than that, I'm like, dude, you can run this business however you want to run this business, as long as we're hitting goals and doing your thing. And I'm not worrying about this monthly net that the business needs to cover for it anymore. So that was the biggest thing that was stressing me out as a business owner, was having the salary to cover that I didn't want to micromanage him all the time. And that's what wasn't working for me. And then having that conversation with him too is uh, I've changed his I've changed his compensation since he started with me 2.5 years ago as painter for $20 an hour all the way to where he is now. I think we've changed his compensation. I think this is the fifth time that we've changed it. So it's been uh, the conversations are very much like, hey man, I got your back, and we got to make sure that you're hitting your monthly goals. And there's a number of different ways that we can do that in the business. We just need to figure out which model works for both of us. And I need to make sure that the business is profitable and we're making money. And so I've always had that conversation with him from day one. It's like, it's got to work for you. It's got to work for the business. And we're here to work together to figure out what that model is.
Yeah, what it sounds like is when it comes to restructuring compensations for a management role, like the expectations ahead of time are really important. Like making sure that they understand that, all right, this compensation is a new role, this compensation structure is a test, things may change, they may stay the same. Had you ever had any resistance at any step of the way when changing his compensation structure from one time to another?
The only one was when he initially went from an hourly painter to having that base. Like he requested more of a base than I was comfortable with, but I was also willing to invest in him at that time. And so that was a little bit of a friction point, but we worked out a deal at that point. And then from that point, I also I was investing in him so much. He was obviously investing in me with his time and in the company, and there just became such a mutual respect for one another after I'd say that first year, 12 to 18 months of being together, that I could finally have those straight up conversations with him and say like, hey, this is working or this isn't working, and here's why. And let me explain it to you, and I'm going to actually walk you through the numbers so that it's not just me telling you it's working or not. It's you actually understand the economics behind the numbers of why it is or isn't working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not just making decisions for on his behalf, but actually involving them in the decision and getting buy-in by showing them the numbers.
Yep, exactly.
What does his scorecard look like right now? What are the metrics that you're assessing, and how do you hold him accountable to those metrics?
Yeah, so right now I basically break it down. So we just did our monthly review meeting. I actually have him rate himself on how'd you rate yourself on scales 0 to 10 on marketing, sales, production, your admin, your team, and your leadership. And I actually have him go through, and I say, hey, a 0 on marketing is you're generating no leads and you don't know how to get leads, and a 10 is you have a machine coming in and you don't have to do anything on the marketing side, right? And so I give him these scales, and then I get him to self-assess, and then we basically talk about each area of the business and what how are you going to go from, if he rates himself at a 6 in marketing today, how are you going to get to a 10? And that becomes our action items for the end of the month. And then a big switch that we did as well is I always looked at my business on an annual basis. So there's always an annual revenue, whether we're going to do, $1 million annually or whatever that was. Having this model, it made me switch to monthly. And all I care about is monthly. And it's made us way more profitable, actually, on the monthly basis, because there's way more urgency behind it. We're way more cognizant of the costs and like our fixed overhead and what we're spending. And then we want to be way more profitable on each job. And so the numbers that we go over with him, I get him to choose, what is his net profit that he wants to make for the month. And then we uh, add that to the fixed costs to figure out what gross margin or gross profit he needs to make on the job, and then work that all the way back to amount of production produced, amount of work booked, to the number of estimates, number of leads, and then build the plan around that.
So this is actually huge. This is one of the main themes that I want to talk about today. And I just want to like do an underline here for anybody listening that like, so I run my business on a monthly basis, meaning that like every month I look at my P&L, every month I look at my balance sheet, every month I look at my statement of cash flows. And I set, goals with me and myself and my team on a monthly basis. And Jesse, you knew the concept of running a business by the month for a really long time, but you never thought to apply it to your painting business. What made you decide to make that shift and try it?
The biggest one is I would run my business on an annual basis and a lot more seasonality, right? And so I would pre-book, focus on pre-booking a bunch of work, sprint really hard in the summer, and then I like to take the winter months off and whatnot. And that's that's just how I had always ran it. Now I've always had other projects going on and other things that are important in my life as well. But placing a CEO in the business, it's like this is his full time thing. Like he needs to make money every month to live, right? And so it made me switch my mindset around how I need to run it as well, and also knowing that he's willing to continue to work whatever amount of hours on a monthly basis throughout the entire year, and he doesn't see it as seasonality like I was seeing it. So it's actually his mindset that got me to shift my mindset that painting doesn't just need to be this seasonal sprint, but we can actually do this way more systematically, way more consistently all the way throughout the year, and not have these big uh, these months where we're burning cash and then these really crazy high profitable months. Well, we still want the high profitable months, but we don't have these periods where we're dipping into the cash reserves of the business to focus on marketing and just pre-booking work. We're actually more consistently booking and producing work all throughout the year, and
Less
that was a
peaks
big
and
mindset
valleys. You don't
shift.
need to like scale up your
Yeah,
sub crews or anything, just more consistency along the board.
yeah, which has also attracted a lot higher quality staff as well, because you attract way more high quality staff when they know you have work, throughout the year, instead of just being like, hey, we have 8 months where we sprint, and then 4 months you got to go figure out your own thing. That model's worked really well for me. I've running it on an annual basis and seasonality, because I got to take a lot of time off and whatnot. But people have different needs, right? And it's cool to have somebody in my business that wants to push you around. They want to crush it every single month and keep pushing the business. And it also brings, like I said, that urgency to it. And we can focus on initiatives a lot quicker as well. So we can see that, instead of trying to, uh, I went to a talk. Jason, do you know Jason Fried from Basecamp?
I'm familiar with the name. I'm not too familiar with him.
So he did a live event in Vancouver, and uh, his perspective changed so many things in my world. They do, like, I don't know, a crazy amount of revenue, like tens of millions of dollars a month. And he's like, yeah, we don't actually track any numbers. The only one we look at is profit and make sure we stay in business. And I'm like, okay. And so then he goes further and he's like, we look at everything in 6 week sprints, and then we have a 2 week cool down period. And so they set their initiatives for 6 weeks. And he says, we do this for 6 weeks and then we just see what happens. And that was so interesting to me, where before that, before I thought about that, I was almost trying to like perfectly write out like what a year of, let's say, running my painting company is going to look like. And it was like a pre-script. And now looking at this on a more like monthly basis, it's like, hey, we're going to go do these initiatives. Rylan, we're going to get you to a 10 in marketing, a 10 in sales, and a 10 in team this month. And then let's see what happens to the numbers. And it's brought so much like more fun and play and curiosity into it, where instead of almost placing these self-limiting beliefs of like, hey, we could go do, X amount. And sure, we can do that, and we still are working with the numbers, but there is a more sense of play and curiosity and just saying like, let's just see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
which I've never done before. And because it's on a monthly basis instead of a year, it's not like you're waiting for a year to see what happens. It's like, hey, we're going to go do these things this month, and then let's see what happens this month.
Kind of like opens up your ability to be creative within your business. It gives you that shorter time cycle. What specific like tactics and
Absolutely.
strategies are you like when you say running your business by the month? Like, what does that mean, and how can somebody do that?
So, I mean, what does it mean is, again, I always start with, um, I mean, how much money do you want to make, right? What is your actual net income that you want to put in your pocket? And then figure out your fixed costs and figure out your numbers, work backwards on that on a monthly basis. And then we do a weekly goal. So then we'll take that month and we break it down into the week. What's your primary goal for this week, and what's your secondary goal? And then you focus on those two things that contribute to that monthly goal.
Okay. So basically start with your goal in mind. So say you want to make 10K profit. You have just going to run some numbers here for anyone painting right now or driving. Bear with me. So save a 50% gross margin. You want to make 10K per month, and you have $3,000 of monthly overhead. So that means you need to produce like 23,000,
26K. Yeah.
26K a month in revenue.
Yeah, 26.
Yeah, 50% is 13, and then
Yeah.
3K fix is 10K net. So running a $26,000 a month as a business is not a crazy number to get to. You need like what, two full-time painters and maybe a helper.
Yeah, if that.
And you can make
like
10K a month. Not
we know with the model that we're running right now is like we can do 30K with 2 guys.
Yeah,
like with 1 crew and 2 guys. Yeah.
yeah, and that's 50% gross margin. Owner not touching the brush.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild? The money that you can make in painting, not even painting.
Well, that's the other thing too, is when we'd have to scale up so much seasonally and we end up with 9, 10 or 11 painters, and then the off season comes and you're like, oh, I got such good people and I want to keep them employed. And then, if you have to let some go, and then I think a lot of people in the painters that I've seen and the ones that I've coached as well is they almost stress themselves out because sometimes they have too many painters and they're always trying to like book these work, but they're not looking at the numbers of what they need to do to hit their profit goals. And so someone might have 7 painters and we do the numbers and I'm like, dude, you need 3. Like what would that do for your life and your business if you knew you only needed 3 painters instead of having this, 7 different people, right?
Yeah. And we get painters, a lot of owners, how many painters they have, and like that number is not a good litmus test for figuring out how big the business is. There's no correlation between how many painters a business has and the revenue that they do.
Yeah, 100%. I'd rather have way less painters that just obviously produce a lot more and it's more profitable.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. A lot less HR to deal with too.
Yep.
So it sounds like the number one thing that you need to do in order to run your business by the month is to know your numbers. So that means job costing every single job. That means knowing your overhead. That means probably using QuickBooks.
Yep.
Do you have? I mean, I would assume that you have a bookkeeper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does your bookkeeper provide you with monthly financial statements?
Yeah, basically P&L, and then I get them to produce a balance sheet every month, but I also run my business based on a balance sheet. And that was actually one of the things that probably 2x my profitability this year was that at any given moment, I know exactly the receivables, all the payables due, and then I know how that correlates to all the operating cash. Actually, I read Profit First. It's a phenomenal book. I don't know if you've read it, but it's like you set up an operating cash account, a profit cash account, a tax cash account. And I think he includes 2 others, but I just do those 3. So I do operating cash, profit, and tax. And then so when money comes in, I try to pay myself first. I put money in the profit account, and then I have some in the tax account, and then I have to run the rest of my business on the operating cash. But I highly recommend that book to any painter out there, Profit First.
I'll have to check that out. And you're going to be presenting at our mastermind next week on running your business on a balance sheet. And just so everyone listening, if you don't know, Jesse is one of the coaches here at Paint and Growth. So if you ever want to chat with him and get coached by Jesse, hit us up. It's a possibility. This could be you. So you look at receivables, meaning your accounts receivable, people that owe you money. Your payables, so the bills that you have and your labor that you need to pay out and your paint store and whatnot, and then the operating cash or like your equity, right? Whatever's left over.
And the other thing on that, Mike, is I only look at the liquid equity. So I don't worry about I have a lease for a Mercedes Sprinter van, and that's obviously we're paying it off over time. I'm not looking at that. I don't add my equipment in there. I just want to know the liquid equity in the business.
Okay. Gotcha. And then since moving to that, like, how has that affected your decision making?
I just cut out anything that was unnecessary, anything that wasn't actually moving the needle forward. And by looking at that, again, I look at the balance sheet every single day, right? So I know exactly what money's coming out for what. And I realized in the first like 18, 20 months of the business, I was just spending on unnecessary things that weren't contributing back to the bottom line or the development of the team. So tightening up the fixed overhead was huge. And then also the other thing that helps the cash is when you know your receivables at any given time, and then you know your payables, it kind of becomes a game where I'm like, I want to keep the receivables as low as possible, which means I'm collecting the cash quicker. Which then, because I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, I'm projecting that I'm closing these jobs on these days, which is my receivables and cash collected. And then I play games with myself and say, hey, can I move this job? Can I close it 2 days faster? Or can I move this around? Can I get this job done on a Friday instead of a Tuesday, which is going to have that cash cycle increase? And then I can also look at my payables and make sure that um, uh, I can leverage, the paint store credit. And I know exactly what that is all the time. So all of a sudden I don't rack up an $8,000 paint store bill. And then you're like, oh my gosh, like I thought I had way more money than I did. Right. Or a massive credit card bill. So I put a $3,000 limit at the paint store and a $2,500 limit on the business credit card to keep those, super in line, but also leveraging them to the maximum of their ability, for cash purposes. So those are a few different ways that I use it. Yeah.
So something that just kind of strikes me as unusual. I talk to a lot of painting contractors, a lot of business people on this podcast, and a lot of contractors in the coaching business. You're throwing around terms like leverage and liquid and job costing and balance sheets and all this stuff. I feel like these aren't typical like acumen of the run of the mill everyday painting contractor.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, I did go to school for business, so I picked up a lot of acumen there. But then ultimately, my longer term goal in life is to. I'm sure most people have read Rich Dad Poor Dad, but you live in the investor box, right? Where you're, I think they show what is an employee, and then something, and then business owner, and then investor box, right?
Self-employed, employee,
Yeah,
self-employed,
yeah. Business owner,
investor.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would say like the majority of painting companies we talk to are self-employed, right? They have a job and they work for themselves, which is kind of the worst because it's a quote like you're kind of working for a maniac, right? So
yeah.
So then I saw step 3 is the business owner box, right? Whereas that's where I feel like I'm in now with the CEO in place, right? I'm actually the business owner. He runs the business. I coach him, and I get paid every month. And then box 4, which I'd love to go into more, which is the investor box. So I've spent a lot of time just investing in, reading books like Profit First and listening to other podcasts on finances, because I made a lot of mistakes in my life. I've had several businesses fail, and the number one reason for them failing was not understanding the business model and how the business was actually going to make money. And so I was like, I will never make that mistake again. And so for me, like finances or cash is it's the lifeline of any business. And it's something I take very seriously now, because I've gotten myself into less than 4 years ago, December 2019, I had to sell my car to afford rent. So when you get to that point in your life, it's not a very fun place to be. And that was just from, I had successes before that, and then I just got so far away from what had got me successful that paying attention to every single penny or every single dollar of business is just imperative for me.
Yeah. I think that's really important to have that type of mindset going into, a business model as, quote unquote, simple as a painting business, and approaching it as a business owner, as an investor. Like, would I invest in this company, right? Would I invest in my own company if someone presented this company to me? And most people would probably fail that test, right?
Totally.
So what do you think the first steps are for someone who's just running their painting business? I mean, you talk to these guys and girls every single day, 93% guys. You talk to these guys and girls. We were just looking at the analytics before the podcast. So you talk to these guys and girls every single day, and more or less where their businesses are, right? A lot of the time they're running around million ways at a time. Maybe they're painting, maybe they're not. Maybe they're managing, doing sales, running production, whatever. Tied up in the day-to-day is kind of the overarching theme, right? How do you recommend someone go from that type of business to being able to have a calm, cool, collect, analytical, financial oriented business?
First off, that is where a lot of people come in at. Right? They're running around with their chicken, but a chicken with their head cut off, and they're in a very reactive state of mind. Right?
A
So
little
they're always
closer to
putting
your
out
mic,
fires.
please.
They're always putting out fires, and it's a very stressful place to be. Right? So it goes back to what I was saying before. It's like understanding your numbers, and so if someone actually is working on a balance sheet or a cash flow sheet, whatever whatever works for you, and you can see, you might not have, so let's say you might not have that cash in your account right now, but if you're looking at your numbers and your jobs coming up in your production planning, and you can see that by the end of the month you are going to have X amount of money in your account, based on what you're producing, that already gives a peace of mind to people. Right. The main reason why I see people are running around with their heads cut off is because they don't know where payroll is going to come from, or they don't know how they're going to pay for. They don't know how they're going to pay for things, and so they just freak out and they're scrambling, trying to do anything or trying to book that next job to get a deposit. And so again, I would say step one is like actually take the time to get your data so that you can make data-driven decisions. Because without tracking your numbers or without tracking your data, you're just guessing. And most of the time, you're probably guessing wrong. So take the time to sit down, understand where every dollar is in your business, and know what is coming, and then identify the gaps that you have. And then the one thing I tell all of our clients as well is being a good entrepreneur or a business owner, it's not only about doing the right thing, but it's about doing the right thing at the right time. Right. So if someone is coming in, they're struggling, and they're let's say they don't have enough leads, right? And then it's Monday at 5 p.m. and they're trying to work on their balance sheet. That's doing the right thing at the wrong time, right? Because they should be working on their marketing engine, between 5 and 8 p.m. Monday to Wednesday at bare minimum. So you could be doing the right thing, but it could be at the wrong time. So being a good entrepreneur is about doing the right thing at the right time.
So understanding your priorities, making sure that you have a decent priority management system to manage your time.
Yep.
So when you say get the data to make data-driven decisions, you're talking about financial data. So getting a bookkeeper to get you these financial statements and get your books all organized, and also your marketing and sales data.
Yep. And then your production data. So your profitability per job, and your monthly fixed cost, your monthly budget as well.
Okay. Let's go one at a time. So what type of, obviously financials, we're looking at profits, we're looking at costs, we're cutting unnecessary expenses. When it comes to marketing, what types of, high level numbers are you looking at? What types of numbers should we have as owners of painting companies?
Yeah. So always, if you're using like direct response marketing, you can always boil it down to like cost per lead or cost per estimate. And so as long as, for me, I know that if our cost per estimate is around $100, right? And then if our close rate, it's about 36% right now, but let's call it 33% for the simple math. That means it's going to cost me $300 to acquire that job, right? Now, then if you deploy job site marketing, which we talk about is like how to turn one job into 3 every time. Well, it's like, then you can, if that $300 is spread over 3 or 4 jobs, that brings that number down even more. So I know that I can play that game all day, as long as, as our average job size is $6,500, $300 is less than 5% of total spend on that direct marketing. So that's a number I'm always looking at. My business is less than 5%, and then how do I spider out from there and land 3 jobs from every one that we book. So that's a big one. I look at marketing, and I'll spread that cost over as well of investing in signs or direct mail, and then again with the direct responses as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so knowing your cost per lead, cost per estimate, and ultimately cost per book job, and then not as just dollar amount, but as a percentage of revenue.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
So if it's 300, if you spend $3,000 and you book $30,000 from it, that's a 10% cost of marketing.
Yeah, and I would say look at this on a rolling basis, right? Like at least like a month data, right? Because you could start this and it might cost you $700 for that first job, and you'll say, oh, this isn't working, but you don't have enough data to do that. So you actually need sufficient data as well. You need at least 30 days of consistently doing something to have any sort of relevant data for you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And that kind of comes down to looking at your, like, running your business on a monthly basis, looking at your marketing numbers on a monthly basis. How much should we spend this month on marketing? How much should we book? And I guess you wouldn't have necessarily gross margin from those jobs that you just booked, but you could look at, when you get to the production part, look at what gross margin was that week or that month rather, and what your cost of marketing really was in terms of production. Do you ever look at that, or just in terms of sales?
Yeah, so this is actually a big shift too, and especially with looking at other painting companies, is when they're trying to map out on an annual basis and they're projecting their variable costs on labor to be a certain amount, which again, like let's say someone's 15% off in their labor for the year, right? On I hate doing public math, but on a $650,000 business, let's say
15% of that?
No, it's gonna be less than that because the labor cost, but it'd be, and let's call it 50, that'd be a 50 grand, give or take, difference on how much profit they're going to make, right? And so if they get to the end of the year and they realize that their labor is 15% higher than it should have been, they're going to miss out on $50,000. If you get to the end of the month, right, on that same business, and you realize that your labor was $4,000 too high this month, and that to a T, like, you can adjust that this coming week and then ultimately this coming month, so that you clean up your labor throughout the year and you don't wake up and realize that you're $50,000 short of where you should have been just on that one number. So that's another really, really important number to keep track of.
Okay. Which is, just to recap, percentage of labor.
Percentage of labor. Yeah. Percentage of labor, and then your paint costs as well. So one thing that I see time and time again is people are 7 to 8% too high on paint and materials. And they're generally like 8 to 12% too high on labor. And that adds up so much, right? You take 20%, right? 20% of $1 million business is $200K. They're $200K too high on their costs. That could just be net profit in your pocket for the same amount.
I mean, I know how I would recommend stabilizing the labor costs in a business, but how do you manage to keep your labor costs at 38, 40%?
Yeah, so with our internal crews, everything's done on a piece rate. And so we know that when we start that job, we have a set number of labor percentage for the job, and then, or a subcontract, which is all percentage based as well. So everything we do in our labor is percentage based.
Okay. So when you give a job to a crew of in-house painters, you'll tell them, like, this is a 100-hour job, and then you'll pay them for 100 hours regardless of how many hours it takes.
Yes. As long as they're, if it does go over, basically the hours would drop to like minimum wage, like beyond that. But if they go over for 2 jobs, it's like we're having a conversation, and they're probably not going to be painters for very long. But you have to factor in the 15% for taxes, or in Canada CPP or EI, to match that. A lot of painting companies will say 100 hours, which is 38% of their labor, but they're thinking that they don't factor in that other 15%, and that's where they get hit on that 8% labor that's too high.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
gotcha.
So it's all those costs. Yeah.
Okay. So knowing your production numbers, and and you target a 50% gross margin on your jobs.
Yeah.
Okay, like a 38% labor and 10 to 12% paint.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so that's job costing. Do you do your own job costing? I mean, I don't imagine. What is your job costing workflow right now? Like, who does it? Who takes the receipts? Who looks at labor?
Yeah. So before I had the CEO in place, I did all the job costing. That was just one thing that it was kind of something that wasn't the most efficient use of my time, like probably not, but it was something that I needed to manually input every time so that I could feel it. Right. I wanted to know exactly what was going on in the business from that perspective, and I could make micro adjustments along the way. So for job costing, and now my CEO of the company, he does all the job costing. So every single function in the business that I used to do, he does now. He runs a balance sheet. He runs the P&L. He runs the job costing. He
So
does
you've
the whole
created
sales.
SOPs for all of these processes for everything.
Every single one. Yeah, it's literally his, and all the way to the point of he has a daily success sheet where every day I'm like, you run through these 9 things in marketing, you run through these 8 things in sales, these 9 things on production, these 3 things on finances, and then you answer these 3 questions at the end of the day. And he just does that every single day.
Yeah. And that gives you the snapshot that you need to see as the advisor of the business.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I guess what's changed in the business that maybe you didn't anticipate happening inside the company since taking a step back?
I didn't anticipate how easy it was going to be.
Okay.
I doubted that this structure was going to work, man. I was just like, there was a key moment actually. It was like September 8th. So it was like less than a week from like taking it over, and I got a really hot inbound lead, like someone that saw us painting in the neighborhood, right? Like directly to my cell phone. And I sat there and I looked at this lead and I was like, oh, I know I can just go book this like 15K job. Like it's gonna be so easy. And maybe I'll even just sub it out and make a little bit more money because I still have that luxury with the company, right? And I was like, no. And I sent that lead. I sent it to the CEO and I said, hey, go take care of this person. And I didn't do that. And he went and booked the I think it was a 13K job. And he did that day. And in getting him that win was just so much more important than me going and booking that job and getting the work done and maybe making an extra, 1 or 2,000 that I could have made on that if I did it the other way. That was probably the biggest moment that I had, was actually letting him go do that, and then giving him that win again was the most important thing that I did in that first week. And it also gave me the confidence that he can do this, right? And the more little things that I can do like that, of just feeding him wins, that's going to gain way more momentum. And then now that he's in this position, he's thinking about this business 24/7 and trying to improve it, right? And then if I can give him a little layup here and there, that momentum and compounding over time is just so much more valuable than me going to do a single estimate or anything like that. So I'm shocked by looking at our numbers in September and October on how well he's done. It's been fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. I think that's a huge lesson for anyone. And it could have gone the other way, right? He could have not closed it, and it could have been a lesson. But I think we've said it a bunch of times on this podcast. But some fires have to burn. You have to let your team. You have to give your team the opportunity to fail, or else they'll never grow.
Exactly. Yep.
What was the thing that you were the most scared about when making that decision to make him the CEO and you taking that step back? What was the scariest part of it? Like the part that you really didn't want to let go of when it came to control, but you just knew you had to.
Yeah, the scariest part is that I have a young family and this is our primary income source. And so for me to literally take a step back um, and to just let him run with things and not just being in that position where I know, if I'm working day to day in the company, even at 10 or 15 hours, I know pretty much to a T what I'm going to book and produce in a month. But to then take a step out of that and put my trust in this person, in knowing that, we still depend on that for our income, for our family, was like, yeah, again, I was having some sleepless nights. I was really worried about how things were going to go. And then, um, ultimately I said, hey, listen, if all else fails, let's say it doesn't go great in September or October, and there's a couple months, I can always step back in. But if I don't, give him an opportunity, I'm never going to be able to experience what it could be on the other side. And I was like, well, like we're in a great, position as a family and whatnot now. But if things didn't go great for a month or two, it's not like um, it's not like we have to sell like the quote unquote the farm, right? We're still in a comfortable place. So that gives a lot of freedom as well to know that we have that safety net. And if there's a month or two, it's not the end of the world. And but yeah, it was still scary. It was still scary, man.
Yeah, no kidding. That's I mean, that's a huge decision. And yeah, you have a new son, who's how many months old now?
Yeah, 4.5 months. Yeah.
4.5 months. So I mean, we have a lot of parents, on this, like, who listen to this podcast, and a lot of people with young families. And I mean, I have a young family too, and I know what that's like to stare at the other end of your income stream potentially falling off. And it is scary, but I guess a lesson that anyone can take from here is that we as entrepreneurs, we can do hard things, and sometimes they really pay off, right? To hit a home run, you have to swing for the fences.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say it's like the amount of micro failures along the way with Ryland that we've had. I let him fail a lot in the first 2.5 years of uh, you know he booked the in the first year of him estimating, it's one of his first jobs, and it was probably a $12,000 job, and he booked it for 4K. We both lost a lot of money, time, and hair. I think that week, but a number of those different things happened along the way where he learned, and now he goes and does an estimate, and we laugh about it. He's like, we laugh about those things now, which is pretty cool.
Yep. What do they say? Hard times make hard people. Something like
Yeah,
that. Tough times make tough people. I think that sounds better.
yeah, yeah. Tough
Anyway,
times.
Jesse, I
Strong
could
people.
talk to you all day, man. We could get into so many more great topics. But I think that's a great place to wrap it up for today. Yeah, man. I think the main thing that people should take from this is yeah, swing for the fences, do hard things, try. What would you say?
Who in your business are you going to see as a way higher possibility than they see themselves as?
Meaning,
Ryland would never see himself as CEO of the company. I
mhm,
I had to see that for him, right? I had to create a vision so big that his vision could fit within the vision.
yep,
So what possibility can you see in others around you that they're not seeing in themselves, and then foster that environment?
yeah, and then get organized, know your numbers, production, sales, financial, marketing,
Yeah,
and then start documenting and developing people. Pour your time into making other people better.
yeah, and take calculated risks, right? So again, we talked about swing for the fences, but also protect your downside. So, and you can protect your downside by knowing your numbers like the back of your hand. And then it's not really that risky, right? But it's still a big swing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, Jesse, stoked to see you next weekend or next week at the Phoenix Mastermind. And yeah, if anyone wants to reach out and ask you a question, Jesse, is there a way that they can do that?
Yeah, they can just hit me up on
I can just throw your
get
email
more.
below, like your,
Yeah, email. I'm more on Twitter these days too. Now I'm starting to get more on Twitter, so you can find me there.
I mean, X.
X, whatever that is.
Yeah. Sweet, Jesse. Thanks again for coming on,
Yeah.
man.
Thanks, Mike.
Great conversation. Congrats on the success. And yeah, I'm stoked to see where you're able to take your business. And
Thanks, brother.
see you next week.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Painter Growth Podcast. If you want to grow your painting business, go to www.paintergrowth.com or click on the top link in the description. Talk soon.